Welcome back to the Portland Regional Championships. We have round 6 between Gary and Marco for you. Gary Chan and Marco Montenegro.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if we know a whole lot about both of the players, but certainly Gary Chan, a well-worn veteran in the scene, doing very well at 2016 Nationals, making day 2 of Worlds that year, being a pretty impressive force in his own right in 2017 Worlds as well.
Yeah, a player who always has something interesting, something a little bit different in each tournament, and I'm really excited to see what that is today.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty interesting matchup we have here. I guess we don't know too much about his opponent yet, Marco Montenegro, but certainly he's gone 4-1 so far at a regional. That's nothing to be ashamed of. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a strong start. There really aren't that many X1 and XO players left in this tournament, so Marco having a really strong performance today.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting to see sort of how Gary plays against someone who he might not know personally as a player and who he might think of as someone sort of newer to the scene, although perhaps Marco's been around a while. And then sort of how Marco approaches tackling on a well-known player who's sort of known for having some crazy things up his sleeve at times.
Yeah, and how he handles something completely unexpected when it does eventually come out.
Yeah.
We have team preview up on the screen. On the left, you can see Gary's team. It's Faramosa, Incineroar, Salamence, Tapu Fini, Snorlax, and Audino. There's the Gary Chan special, something a little different. On the other side, we have Marco's team. It's Charizard, Venusaur, Snorlax, Cresselia, Landorus, Therian, and Tapu Koko.
Yeah, so sort of maybe a Sun team from Jay's side, having like the Venusaur that maybe has chlorophyll and the ability to sort of abuse Charizard's Sun weather, although I suppose there could be a couple of other things from Charizard Venusaur. You could have like Charizard X, you could have Mega Venusaur.
You could have pledges.
Yeah. And then Gary having some things that seem very volatile. Like the Faramosa is always tough to play against because it can do so many things, and there's just sort of this like dependency on reading when you're playing a Faramosa, and that's not always very easy to do because sometimes you don't know what the moveset is on the Faramosa or like what exactly they're going to go for. So like you sort of have to read the moveset and the plays.
And then Faramosa always a Pokemon hitting in one slot, and you've got to get that right. It's going to be so dangerous with Faramosa. If you protect and it hits in the other spot, you can be in trouble really quickly.
Yeah, and then I guess there's some sort of setup Pokemon on Gary's side. He's got the Incineroar to sort of support some Pokemon that I suppose they could be just offensive. They could be setup, but there's like the Mence and the Finny and the Snorlax that definitely have the potential to do some setup and be scary.
Yeah, and I would expect that Audino is support for those setup Pokemon also. Could be Mega in its own right, or just maybe the Mega on Salamence and Tapu Fini doing its own, or rather, Audino doing its own thing, some other item. So they have made their selections. We will be moving to the first turn here. The oh-so-crucial first lead matchup in this game 1. We'll just see if Gary immediately went for one of these setup Pokemon and how Marco's going to handle it. So Gary does lead Incineroar and Faramosa up against, for Marco, the Cresselia and Tapu Koko.
So a much more standard lead from Marco's side than from Gary's side. I'm not sure what to expect, but it does seem that Gary has sort of a way to, like the Incineroar is in a pretty optimal position here. And the Faramosa certainly has some things it can do always to do some damage to the opposing side.
Yeah, it always has something it can do, but neither of these Pokemon neutral to fighting attacks. Probably not exactly what Faramosa would like to come up against. If it has maybe a coverage move for Tapu Koko or like a bug move for Cresselia, it can still be some big damage output. If it doesn't, it may not really have that much to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's sort of you might not know Faramosa's moveset in the first game, and so Marco might need to sort of gather some information on, if I lead Tapu Koko and Cresselia, will the Faramosa be able to do anything, or will it be sort of dead weight?
Yeah. Faramosa going to switch out here, maybe indicating it had nothing it could do. Snorlax is going to hit the field. Not Pokemon that is too worried about the offense, maybe hoping to catch a Cresselia Trick Room. Tapu Koko also going to leave the field. Landorus is going to come in, get a really nice Intimidate here onto both Incineroar and Snorlax. That's 2 big attack drops for Marco here, really getting the most out of that Intimidate. Incineroar going to go for Fake Out, landing onto Landorus right as it switches in, and then Cresselia Icy Winding, 2 Pokemon that don't really care about their speed too much.
Yeah, so sort of a null turn in terms of damage. Both players sort of like vying for some better positioning. I think that probably turns out a little more in Marco's favor because we've got the Landorus in and everything is intimidated on Gary's side. But definitely that Snorlax was a really good switch to have for the Koko Cresselia.
Yeah, I think the Intimidate is really useful, and you kind of run into the rare situation where Earthquake is really easy for Marco here. You've got Incineroar that you can hit really hard. Snorlax won't like taking that big chunk of damage from unintimidated Landorus, and then Cresselia sitting there happy to, maybe cover the switch with another Icy Wind and just levitate through that Earthquake.
Or if it has Helping Hand, it could just make sure that Earthquake does a lot of damage.
Incineroar switching out. Tapu Fini going to hit the field, switch this Electric Train out for Misty Train. Won't have to be worrying about statuses on this grounded Snorlax, but of course both Pokemon on the other side not grounded. Cresselia does go for Helping Hand, just like you mentioned. Time to see if it's a big Earthquake coming out. And it is. It's going to be huge damage onto both Snorlax and Tapu Fini. Incineroar would have been even more damage, but Tapu Fini doesn't switch in to resist this Earthquake or anything. Just going to take giant damage here. More than 50% to both Pokemon, just barely. That is going to start Snorlax munching away on its berry. Going to heal almost back to full health using that Figgy Berry. And then going to go for a return against Landorus. Pick up a decent chunk of damage here, but really not too much after that Intimidate.
Yeah, so I think the Helping Hand is really important here because that Tapu Fini normally would be a very good switch to handle the Landorus. But here, because of the Helping Hand, like now this Earthquake is a 2-hit KO unless Incineroar comes back in. And if it comes back in, then it has to take an Earthquake.
Yeah, it has to take its own Helping Hand Earthquake. I think that's a really easy attack to go for. Tapu Fini is going to switch out. Incineroar is going to come in and land another Intimidate onto, or the first Intimidate rather, onto this Landorus. Going to be threatening Fake Out again on the next turn. We're going to have to see if it takes a big Earthquake for the switch in though. The Helping Hand does come out. And, of course, there it is, the Earthquake. No reason not to go for it. Going to be massive damage onto this Incineroar, if not the KO. And then another big chunk on Snorlax. Won't be to 50% again because of that Intimidate, but still really valuable damage. Incineroar does hang on about a quarter health and munches away on its own berry, back up to about 75% health.
Yeah, so the berry making things a little bit more reasonable for the Incineroar switch in. And then Recycle, of course, covering all of the health Snorlax lost. So Gary somehow managing to find some sort of defensive middle ground in the face of Earthquakes that seem like they could be really problematic in games 2 and 3 as well. Like, this is just very scary positioning of the Landorus.
Yeah, I mean, once it's out here and those Helping Hands are boosting, I mean, you do have Fake Out now to prevent another Earthquake this turn, but really haven't shown the damage to push Landorus off the field yet. When Tapu Fini was out, you were at least threatening that Muddy Water, but now we've seen how little that Snorlax return does. That's not going to be the damage to really force Landorus out of here.
Yeah, so if Gary can use the Fake Out turn to maybe get some setup or sort of recover positioning a little bit more, but it does seem like he's lost an awful lot of hit points so far for this early in the game.
Especially with these setup Pokemon, those health bars can be so valuable when you're giving up big chunks of them and the berries. It makes it a lot harder later in the game.
Absolutely.
Landorus does switch out. Tapu Koko's going to hit the field, bring back its Electric Terrain along with it so that those big Thunderbolts, maybe Volt switches are boosted, and maybe status comes into play again. Incineroar also going to switch out. Pheromosa coming back in right against Tapu Koko and Cresselia, a matchup it did not like earlier in the game. Ally switch comes out. Going to be moving that Tapu Koko that just switched in over to the other side of the field while Cresselia switches also, and then Snorlax going to go for that Belly Drum completely free as the switch and the Ally switch come out from the other side. Snorlax did recycle in the previous turn, so it's going to have that berry again, going to be up to like 60% health. A pretty nice turn for a Belly Drum here, because you also then have Pheromosa threatening some damage, or maybe even threatening that speed swap.
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting potential from Gary's side this turn, because he managed to get that Pheromosa in safely. I think probably initially maybe just it was intended to sort of threaten the Landorus, because the Landorus was causing a lot of problems. But with how it worked out, now like there's a bit less pressure on the Snorlax overall.
Yeah, and you know it's kind of hard to find both a free switch in for Pheromosa and a free Belly Drum, but that's what that switch and Ally switch from Marco's side allowed here on this turn.
I did want to talk about that because I thought it was a fairly, like it didn't work out because of the Belly Drum, but I thought it was a fairly intelligent play where Marco just recognized he needed to get Koko in very safely. And so I think if that had worked out a bit better for preserving Lando, it could have been really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Tapu Fini switching in for Pheromosa. Pheromosa still doesn't like the matchup it has against Cresselia and Tapu Koko, so instead the Train's going to switch out, maybe weaken this Helping Hand boosted, maybe even Gigavolt Havoc that's about to come out. Yeah, that's going to be a Gigavolt Havoc, so really crucial there to get Tapu Fini in, get rid of that Electric Train, and really weaken the damage output from this Gigavolt Havoc.
If this is a KO, though, then we may have spoken too soon saying that Gary was in good position, because that Gigavolt always does so much to everything.
Yeah, we're going to have to see. Snorlax not the most healthy here, was fairly low after that Belly Drum before eating its berry on the last turn. This is going to be really crucial. Does it hang on? Joe just barely 18 health and gets the recycle off. Going to be back up above 50% health and that Z move burn.
So Gary, with the really intelligent Tapu Fini switch in, managing to sort of save his Snorlax just well enough to live and fight another day.
Yeah, so crucial there. I mean, Snorlax is really going to be the key for Gary here. He's going to have to support it, and finding the switch in that allowed Snorlax to hang on and get healthy again. And now this Tapu Koko without Gigavolt Havoc, without Electric Train, really isn't threatening that much damage. Cresselia, of course, isn't threatening that much damage either, so Snorlax can likely recycle again, just try to get even more healthy.
Yeah, I think Snorlax surviving was so crucial there because now it has the ability to get pretty much back up to full health if it just keeps recycling.
Yeah, nothing to stop that recycle yet. Tapu Fini going to switch out, doesn't want to take a Thunderbolt. Incineroar coming in, going to be offering that fake out pressure again, even though this Intimidate on the switch in isn't very valuable. Really nothing gained by intimidating a Cresselia and a Tapu Koko. Cresselia going to also switch out, showing it doesn't have any damage output, maybe needs something threatens a little more, and so Landers comes out, going to intimidate both of these. Get that Snorlax down to only +5 after that, and that Belly Drum, and then the Incineroar down to -1. Volt Switch comes out, going to do a decent chunk of damage to Incineroar here, and then further change the field position for Marco.
Yeah, so I think really important, again, to get in the Incineroar so that there's fake out pressure and the Snorlax isn't going to go down this turn.
Cresselia comes right back onto the field, switches out, and then gets Volt Switched back into, as Snorlax does go ahead and recycle, going to be looking to stay healthy, except it might be in Helping Hand Earthquake range.
Ooh, yeah, I think we hadn't seen before for sure whether Finny was faster or Cresselia was faster, and that ended up mattering a lot. I think Gary maybe was hoping to get that Intimidate off on the Landorus rather than the other way around.
Oh, you're right. That would have been a big kind of game changer here, because then Snorlax would have pretty comfortably held on past a Helping Hand boosted Earthquake. Now it's much more in the air, but does still have that fake out support, can prevent Landorus from attacking this turn. But if Snorlax's health doesn't move anywhere, you're still under the same threat the next turn.
So we might see the ally switch play again. We'll have to see.
Yeah, Tapu Koko does switch in for Landorus here. Going to bring back the Electric Terrain along with it. Now going to be offering a lot more damage than it was a couple turns ago in Misty Terrain. Fake Out does come out onto Tapu Koko, trying to keep that Landorus from attacking. A critical hit means that's a nice chunk of damage. Ally switch again, trying to get Tapu Koko in very safely again. Return comes out. Which slot's it going to be in? Oh! Either called the ally switch or just wanted a bunch of damage against Cresselia, and so Tapu Koko goes down, brings the Electric Terrain, but not going to be able to take advantage of it. That's a big KO for Gary here.
Yeah, so I think the tough thing is that even if he left if Marco left Landorus in, like the ally switch was definitely an option he had, and so Gary kind of had to address that. And so the ally switch didn't work quite as well, although I think that's a really interesting way of playing it, like not using it as a sort of a pseudo follow me, but as a way to just like get a safer switch in. But it's not working out quite as well as Marco maybe had hoped.
Yeah, Landorus does hit the field here again, get a nice Intimidate off. Snorlax now only to +4, but that's still so much damage. Incineroar starting to get pretty weak, though. Maybe going to need to switch out before it can offer any damage, even against Cresselia.
Yeah, I think if that Helping Hand is scaring Gary at any point, then it's right now. I'm not sure if Gary has any counterplays if Landorus has the ability to take the KO right now.
Yeah, Helping Hand Earthquake maybe is the KO against both of these, and that's scary for Gary.
Scary for Gary.
Incineroar switching out, Pheromosa coming back in, maybe looking to take that Earthquake. Still going to be a lot of damage, even resisted. Snorlax also switching, doesn't want to try to take that Helping Hand boosted Earthquake, and so just taking those boosts with it and leaving the field. Tapu Fini going to be coming out. We've already seen that the Helping Hand boosted Earthquake should be enough damage to just KO. And I got to expect that's what's coming out here. So the Helping Hand does come out, going to be boosting whatever Landorus does. Oh, but it's Superpower, not Earthquake. And so this Tapu Fini switch is great. It's going to get Tapu Fini down into, I think, berry range and keep that Snorlax healthy. Yeah, that berry's going to activate. Tapu Fini's going to go back up to like 75% health. A really great switch there.
Yeah, so really just an impressive evaluation that, yeah, even though I have the boost on the Snorlax, like I don't actually need to leave it in there, and I'm going to be in a much better position if I don't, because my opponent has to respect that, and so he's going to sort of compromise his Landorus in a way that lets me to get Tapu Fini up in health and lower Landorus's attack and its defense.
Yeah, I mean, that Helping Hand boosted Earthquake looked like it was getting ready to almost just move through the team, and now instead Tapu Fini's healthy enough to take it because it did get that health back, and then of course with the Superpower drop, you just don't have the damage output.
And I think something we had missed earlier is just that Helping Hand Earthquake was doing around half to Snorlax, I think. So Landorus had to go for Superpower and not Earthquake to get that KO.
Yeah, unless you were just hoping for a roll that went right to your favor. Landorus does switch out here, doesn't want to keep those Superpower drops, and so instead Snorlax for Marco is going to hit the field, going to be trying to play Snorlax versus Snorlax. Tapu Fini does leave, and Snorlax comes in for Gary also, and then the ally switch comes out, Marco just keeps trying to cover those switch-ins with ally switches, gets Snorlax moved over to the other slot, but then that speed swap comes out. Pheromosa becoming very slow, but Snorlax becoming very fast. That's now a fast, bulky, offensive Snorlax. But maybe that means it's a safe time for Marco to go for Trick Room here. You know, the answer to any Trick Room by Marco would be that slow Snorlax on his side, but it's not slow anymore.
Yeah, so maybe we'll see the Pheromosa speed swap back at some point. I think it's really interesting to see speed swap coming out so late in the game. Normally that's something you see right away, and here Gary waited for like just the right moment to try to pull it out.
The helping hand does come out while for the Snorlax on the Marco's side, while the belly drum comes out for the Snorlax on Gary's side, going to be munching away at its berry back up to just above 50% health, but now with all those boosts it gave away, switching out just a moment ago. The opposing Snorlax goes for Earthquake, going to be looking for spread damage, but I don't think it's going to be the KO on either of these Pokemon.
Yeah, maybe just not quite enough damage to have the level of threat that Marco had been hoping for.
Yeah, it's just not enough. Snorlax hanging on comfortably at like 40%, while Pheromosa hangs on also comfortably like 60%, and then goes for this big all-out pummeling.
Our really slow Pheromosa still managing to put in some work.
Yeah, the slow Pheromosa surviving the turn of Snorlax, outspeeding it, and then getting this all-out pummeling off to probably KO the Snorlax. There we go.
I never thought I'd see the day when a Snorlax was faster than a Pheromosa.
Yeah, and so gets the KO there. That's another big swing, as now the only Snorlax left in this game is Gary's Snorlax.
Yeah, so I think Gary now getting off the belly drum without taking too much damage, getting the KO on the Snorlax is in great position to take this game.
Yeah, I think so. I do kind of wonder what Marco was looking for with that Earthquake on the previous turn.
Yeah, I suppose it's tough to know. Maybe expecting Gary not to go for the belly drum in exactly that situation. Just trying to get some good damage off.
Yeah, maybe didn't expect those big boosts. Landorus does hit the field again, going to intimidate both the Pheromosa and the Snorlax. I don't think we know definitively yet whether this Pheromosa is physical or special. All we've seen is that all-out pummeling.
I think we missed the Beast Boost that would have told us.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I thought it said special attack, but I'm not going to say that.
Landorus here going to be outsped by the Snorlax on the other side of the field, and it has the belly drum, so even after that intimidate, going to just outspeed and KO Landorus if it wants to.
Yeah, and I think Pheromosa wanting to get its speed back, so it's going to switch out here.
Yeah, Incineroar coming back in, going to be threatening that fake out once again, and going to be getting a nice intimidate in on this Landorus. And then Snorlax will just go for that return, and going for the Cresselia, not the Landorus. That intimidate means that Cresselia just barely hangs on and eats its own berry, going to go back up to about 70% health. That intimidate really useful even at the boosted Snorlax. And then Earthquake is going to come out from the Lancer on the other side. No helping hand this time, though. May mean Snorlax can hang on after that intimidate. It does! Incineroar goes down, but Snorlax hangs on at 22 HP. That's so important because now it is a fast Snorlax. So you normally look at those low health Snorlaxes, not that valuable. Icy Wind comes out, though, a little bit less fast Snorlax, and now it has to hang on again. And it does! 7 HP.
Snorlax just barely hanging on for its trainer there. I think also Marco's now very low in terms of time, so I'm not sure if maybe this game could just end from timer.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. He's going to need to make quite a few more inputs to come back in this game, and with 23 seconds, that's going to be really difficult. Pheromosa hits the field now at Pheromosa speed without the Icy Wind. Snorlax at Pheromosa speed with the Icy Wind, but that means at least Pheromosa is faster, should be faster than the Landorus on the other side and be threatening the KO. So even without the time, this would be really difficult for Marco, I think.
Yeah, but I think just it's so frustrating to not have enough time at this exact moment because a correct ally switch here could actually save the game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you ally switch the Cresselia to take the Ice Beam and then Landorus can outspeed and KO Snorlax, that's a huge swing in the game. Ice Beam comes out. Where's it going to go?
Into Cresselia.
Into Cresselia. Predicted the Icy Wind, but it didn't happen. Instead, we do get a freeze, though, on that Cresselia. Snorlax going to recycle, looking to get more healthy. And like you said, still faster. Icy Wind not enough to get Landorus faster than the Snorlax. And so it is able to heal before Landorus can get an attack off. And so it's going to stay nice and healthy here as Rock Tomb comes out, trying to drop the speed even more. So now both this Pheromosa and the Snorlax are at Pheromosa speed -1.
So that's tough. I think Marco made some of the right plays to just sort of set up the speed control in his favor, but then maybe just that Pheromosa was trained to be fast enough that like with speed swap, even when the Snorlax is at -1, it's still pretty fast. Like maybe that Pheromosa is even speed raising nature.
Yeah, which may mean it got the speed beast boost, and we still wouldn't definitively know
wow.
what spectrum that Pheromosa was going offensively on. Because yeah, that game would have been very different if both of those Pokemon, both the Pheromosa and Snorlax, had been slower at -1.
Yeah. I think that would have sealed the game at that exact moment.
Yeah, still would have needed the KO. The Rock Tomb came in on Pheromosa, so even if Landorus had outsped Snorlax, it still would have got that recycle off.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to get the damage in both slots and the speed drop.
Yeah, I think maybe the Cresselia was hoping to not be frozen and do a little more damage, but it still would have been really tough.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting for Game 2 because the Landorus and the Cresselia seem like such a strong position. And I think if Marco just finds a few ways to sort of work around the specific speed swap setup. Like, he's still in a great spot to maybe still do very well in the game.
Yeah, he had Gary on the back foot for a huge portion of that game, just trying to search for an opportunity to answer that Landorus plus Cresselia. If you can get into another position like that and maybe deny Gary any field position that pushes Landorus out, could be really valuable for him.
So I'm perhaps suspecting that Gary will bring Salamence this time, just because that Earthquake was so difficult to manage, and he only has the one Earthquake immunity. I think it might be really important to play to Salamence, either maybe now in Game 2, or if Marco manages to work out the Earthquake in Game 2, Gary might have to consider it for Game 3.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting we didn't see any Mega from Marco that last game. No Charizard, no Venusaur. It was just left with Sun mode completely at home.
I think no one brought their Mega in the first game.
Yeah, we didn't see the Salamence or the Audino, which we don't know which one's the Mega, but one of those two's got to be it, and both of those were the two that Gary left back in the back.
Yeah. Oh, and then I guess Charizard or Venusaur could have been the Mega.
Yeah, so the 4 Pokemon that have Mega evolutions all stayed at home for Game 1. We'll have to see if any of them show up, and immediately we do see Landorus and Charizard for Marco, so he's decided to bring his Mega out, and then Incineroar and Tapu Fini for Gary, so no new Pokemon on Gary's side yet.
So I think that's interesting. The one obstacle to Landorus, other than like really fast Snorlax and like Pheromosa with Ice Beam, was the Finny, and so now like Marco's adjusting and being able to bring potentially Sun to stop the Finny from being nearly as threatening.
Yeah, going to be able to weaken those Muddy Waters, maybe threaten a big Solar Beam onto Tapu Fini also.
So this is definitely where Salamence would be pretty useful to get in over the next few turns if Gary did bring it, and if not, it might be a consideration Gary has for the next games. Although perhaps there's reasons he might not want to bring a Salamence. Maybe it's sort of an unconventional set like we know Gary to use.
Yeah, for sure, because otherwise you look at Charizard and Landorus, and those are two Pokemon you'd love to come in, intimidate the Landorus, not worry about any of Charizard's offense, and have Salamence in really safely.
I suppose Ancient Power, but that's really stretching it.
The Landorus is going to switch out, doesn't like the position it's in up against Tapu Fini, as the Venusaur is going to come in, and so the Sun mode has been switched to for Marco. Incineroar going to also be switching out, not going for a fake out, and now the Audino comes in, so new Pokemon all around. The Charizard does Mega Evolve here for Marco, going to be bringing out that Sun and most likely boosting the speed of that Venusaur with its Chlorophyll.
Yeah, so I suppose we'll have to see what the level of damage output is from Marco, but it looks like Gary could be in a bit of trouble here.
Charizard does protect itself, doesn't want to have to maybe take a fake out plus a water move as that Muddy Water does come out. Going to hit into Protect on Charizard and so do pretty minimal damage to Venusaur.
So I think this next turn is sort of going to depend on how much damage the Audino is going to take. If it can survive and maybe like set up a Trick Room or help Tapu Fini set up, that could be really instrumental for Gary's game plan. But if the sort of hyper-offensive Venusaur plus Charizard is able to take enough, is able to do enough damage to the Audino to just get rid of it, then that could put Gary on a back foot really quickly. Yeah,
it's always interesting. We don't know how much Marco knows about Audino, what kind of competitive element he expects out of it. And a lot of players react to that in different ways. Either you ignore the Pokemon and we find out what it does, or you just KO it as fast as you can. Get it off the field. Don't try to learn about it. Just make sure it doesn't do anything unexpected. Tapu Fini does leave the field. Snorlax going to be coming back in that slot. And then we see the Z move coming out. Going to be a Bloom Doom from that Venusaur.
Yeah, likely targeting the Fini, although I suppose it could be getting rid of the Audino as well.
Yeah, you would expect maybe a Sludge Bomb if it was going to Audino, unless you don't carry that. So the Bloom Doom probably means it was trying to get that big KO onto Tapu Fini, instead going to be landing onto that Snorlax. Still pretty valuable damage, but not nearly as valuable if it landed on Tapu Fini.
Yeah, I think just the advantage of Gluttony is that Snorlax can sometimes come in as sort of a pseudo-protect for its other Pokemon.
Yeah, as it does. It gets almost back to 100% health before this Flamethrower also comes out, but onto Audino. Does a little bit more than 50%, and then Trick Room comes out. So we saw fast Snorlax in Game 1, and now we see slow Trick Room Snorlax in Game 2.
Gary finding all sorts of ways to set up his Snorlax in the face of Marco's offense.
Yeah, and so Snorlax still doesn't have its berry anymore. Maybe going for a Belly Drum?
Yeah, I mean, I think you might have to suspect it, although I suppose it could maybe try to like recycle for a few turns first. It's important to note, though, that if Marco makes it through Game 2 and faces Audino in Game 3, the Flamethrower was doing a lot of damage to Audino, and certainly a double target could have gotten rid of it.
Absolutely. Belly Drum comes out for the Snorlax, not worrying about not having a berry yet, going to stay at 50% health, but now at +6 attack. Audino, though, going to heal Pulse right after that Belly Drum and get Snorlax almost back to full health. Who needs a berry when you have Audino? Charizard going to go for that Heat Wave. Audino does dodge the attack. Probably would have been a KO based on all that flamethrower damage last turn.
It would have been close.
And then Heat Wave does a pretty good chunk to Snorlax, and then Sludge Bomb also going to do another good chunk to Snorlax, but because of that Heal Pulse, it is hanging on at about 40% health.
Yeah, and I think this is scary because Audino can just go for another Heal Pulse this turn, and then Snorlax can start taking KOs.
Right, yeah, you can take the KO and then heal, and then you're not doing the 50% to Snorlax, you're doing like 30% to Snorlax, and you're not out-damaging those Heal Pulses anymore, and things start to get out of control.
Yeah, I think just Trick Room plus Belly Drum Snorlax plus Heal Pulse is just such a terrifying thing to face when it gets set up properly.
Yeah, and so we do see this frustration come out and just KO this Charizard.
And the Heal Pulse?
Yep, Audino going for that Heal Pulse, going to be getting Snorlax back to maybe 80-90% health, very healthy. Venusaur going for that Leaf Storm, going to go for that big grass attack that was used for the Bloom Doom earlier, going to do maybe 30% to Snorlax, but just not enough as Venusaur's special attack drops.
Yeah, I think maybe Marco has a plan for sort of keeping Snorlax from getting back up to full, but it's going to be really tough to come back. Even once Trick Room runs out, the Snorlax has been staying healthy for so long that it's going to be really difficult to adjust.
Yeah, I mean, this Intimidate's kind of nice, but I wouldn't be surprised. I would expect that both these Pokemon are still KO'd, even at +5 instead of +6.
It gets to be a pretty small difference between the +5 and the +6.
So yeah, I would expect nothing new, nothing different from Gary. Just keep attacking and heal pulsing.
Probably. I think maybe Gary wants to think about when Trick Room ends at some point soon, just so that he sort of has a strong endgame plan. But if that Landorus doesn't have Protect, I don't think we ever saw it in the previous game, then I think he can just keep taking KOs. And the Venusaur's -2 as well.
Yeah, so Venusaur is going to switch out, wants to get rid of that -2. That means Cresselia is going to be coming in, going to be the 4th Pokemon for Marco over there. That return does come out onto Landorus with no Protect, like you mentioned, and so it is just KO'd. So that's down to 2 Pokemon from Marco's side of the field. And then that Heal Pulse just keeps coming out, going to be 100% healthy Snorlax on that side of the field.
Man, Marco threw like the equivalent of 200 or 300% damage down onto that Snorlax, and it's just been healing over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? It's a Bloom Doom, it's a Leaf Storm, it's a Sludge Bomb, it's a Sun Boosted Heat Wave from Charizard Y. That is so much damage.
So I think unless like there's some really clever ally switch and protecting to catch the Snorlax targeting, Gary should be able to just seal this off within Trick Room. If not, he's going to maybe have to think a little bit about the end of Trick Room, but Snorlax is at full.
He can just recycle and get another berry and just start playing this very defensively with Snorlax. These Pokemon haven't shown the offense to ever break Snorlax. Tapu Fini's going to hit the field for Audino, bringing out that Misty Terrain. Cresselia going for ally switch, like you mentioned, trying to find where that Snorlax is attacking and mitigate any damage it was doing, but no Protect, and so that return is just going to land. Where's it going? Onto Venusaur for the KO.
And now I think we're pretty confident that there's no way the Snorlax can go down. Gary even set up the Misty Terrain again so that you can't be frozen.
Yeah, there's just no outs left anymore. I mean, your Snorlax should do, we saw it in the last game, it should be like 80% to this Cresselia from +5 attack. Will take you 2 hits to do it, but that should be no problem. Meanwhile, Tapu Fini can Calm Mind. You have other Pokemon. It's just very easy for Gary from here on out.
Yeah. So I think that was a really close match, even though it seemed like Gary sort of pulled through at the end because he managed to get the Snorlax setups each time. I think Marco had some tools that did a lot of damage. I think he struggled with sort of figuring out how exactly to use Cresselia. It seemed like it was really useful in the matchup, but it was just tough to always get those because it couldn't really do much other than Helping Hand and Ally Switch. And so it sort of had that problem that Cresselia often had, like back in the distant past of VGC, of just like sometimes being near dead weight, even though it's amazing support. And sort of like, how do you figure out how to make it with Ally Switch and Helping Hand be able to actually work and not just be something that your opponent can ignore?
Yeah, I mean, we saw when Gary didn't have the speed control, those Helping Hand Earthquakes were coming out, hitting so hard. But in both games, as soon as Gary had the speed control, you were able to attack before the Helping Hand boosted Pokemon, be threatening KOs against that Pokemon. And so then Cresselia tried to find something to do on its own and just didn't have it.
Yeah, and I think Cresselia managed to, like, it didn't really work on its own speed control, and so Gary, like, it often was sort of just ally switching or helping handing, and so it meant Gary could ignore it while he was setting up because he had Snorlax that he was setting up, and it doesn't take much damage. It can even survive some helping hand attacks every now and then.
Yeah, like we saw it do. I thought it was really cool. We saw 2 completely different Snorlax setups, and both with, like, kind of obscure ways to do it, with Heal Pulse and Trick Room and with Speed Swap.
Yeah, I think it just speaks to how incredibly strong Snorlax is in this format. Even though we're in a format where more Pokemon are available than 2017, and Snorlax wasn't like 100% usage in 2017 or anything, it's still so scary, and there are so many different ways to support it. So even though Snorlax is kind of like the standard thing we see a lot, Gary's found a lot of really interesting innovations to make it even scarier.
Yeah, absolutely. And Snorlax just is so bulky in kind of a general way, with just not relying on resistances, just has so much health, can take kind of whatever set of attacks you throw at it. We saw fire, poison, grass in that game, and just keep healing.
Snorlax took so much damage in those sets.
So much damage. And, we didn't see a couple of other setup options that Gary had. We didn't ever see the Salamence in the match at all. No Mega from Gary in what was a pretty nice 2-0 win.
Yeah, I really thought the Salamence was coming out, and I was totally wrong.
Yeah, I guess just relying on Snorlax and trying to build then what was the best support for that Snorlax and deciding Salamence wasn't part of that set.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. It's rare that you see a team that's going to prevent you from bringing Snorlax. Like, you have to have a lot of anti-Snorlax power to prevent it from being effective.
And the Sun mode and Landorus, Coco, these kind of things just weren't what was needed. There was no fighting type on Marco's side, that kind of thing that would actually be needed to force Snorlax to find
also
something else.
The Landorus never went for knockoff, which would have been really helpful if he had managed to knock off the berry on the Snorlax and prevent it from ever being able to set up.
Yeah, that's true. Especially in Game 1, it was relying a lot more on its own recovery. Game 2, did it recycle once?
No.
So it maybe wouldn't have made sense. It's kind of interesting that Audino provides that kind of backup if you do get knocked off.
Yeah.
Here's another way to keep Snorlax healthy, keep playing the more long-term game with Snorlax.
Yeah, and I think you had the Incineroar support to help too, and then you can just make Snorlax fast, and then it doesn't matter if it can't recover.
Yeah. Really cool team from Gary. It'll be exciting. He's got to win one more for us to see it tomorrow in top 8, so I'm going to be rooting for that.
And good luck to Marco as well as he heads into his last few matches. I think he had some really cool setups, and I really liked the way he was playing out of Switch. I think he just needs to figure out how to do that a little more effectively.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break and be back with the last round, round 7, here in the Portland Regional Championships.